Okay, let's continue with another concept, namely functions, scope, returning, and parameters. Okay, so essentially, what we would want to do is say we want to grab any number and we want to do +4 and times 2 on it. Then we could define a function which is basically a piece of code that you can easily repeat without actually having to write the entire thing over and over again. So, for example, this one doesn't really make it shorter, but just for sake of demonstration, we can print high here. And obviously, if we just do it really often, it'll just happen really often in a row. So, for example, right now it will print 6 highs, as you can see. But there is a different approach that is mostly used because usually you're doing something more complex than print. In which case we can make a function that would be, for example, print high. That's the name of the function here. Then we open and close brackets, and we hit enter, and this end thing appears, which basically marks that is where the function ends. So whenever you run the function, whatever is in between the brackets here and in between the end, that is what's gonna happen when you run the function. So we can just go like this and print high 6 times in the print high. So now say we want to print high 18 times, we no longer have to do print high and then copy paste this 18 times. No, we now can simply do print high 3 times, and it will also print high 18 times, as we did it 6 times per function, and we used the function 3 times, as you can see. 16 highs. 18, sorry. Okay, so that's like the concept of functions. Basically, you can make your code a lot shorter if you use them, which also can make it a lot more readable. So, for example, when you're reading someone else's code or your code that you wrote a few months ago or so, it will be far easier to understand it when you make use of functions. So, as said, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually use parameters. Parameters are things you give a function to work with so that the function does not do the exact same thing every time it's run, but only conceptually. So, for example, we can make a function called sum, and we can grab it into num1 and num2. So basically, this is like two variables that are defined when the function is being called, like this. And for example, we can do 2 and 3. So what we would want to do here is to sum up 2 and 3, and then, for example, print it. We will want to do something along the lines of this: num1, num2. Oh, no, sorry, plus. So currently, because there is an arithmetic operation here, a math operation, a plus, it will first do this part. So it'll first combine the number 1 and number 2, because those are the variables that the values are stored in. Basically, the first value, the 2, is saved when this function is called. The 2 here from this call is saved in the variable num1, which is called a parameter, and this 3 is saved in the number 2. So currently, this number 1 has a value of 2, and this number 2 has a value of 3. So first of all, this thing is calculated, which is in this case 2 plus 3. So it'll be 5, and then it will proceed to print it. So let's go ahead and see what it does. As you can see, it now says 5. So for example, let's say we, instead of just adding it and printing it, we actually want to do something further with it. So we'll, for example, save it in a separate variable so that we have the sum in one variable, so we don't have to type type num1 plus num2 the entire time. So let's name it num3, for example, number 3, num1 plus num2. This is the exact identical thing. So num1 basically is identical to num3 is identical to num1 plus num2. So we can replace it here to num3. And now we can just do whatever with the num3 further without having to type num1 plus num2 every time. Now the thing is, in here we can print num3, but if we print num3 down here, as you'll be able to see, it also underlines it, it prints nil. Nil basically means that there is no value. There simply is nothing in the variable. Which is because this variable is not defined. And now you might ask, why is this variable not defined? We defined it here, right? Well, that's the thing about things like functions. If you define something in a function, it will always stay inside of the function. So whenever this end is found, the num3 variable basically gets deleted. It just disappears from your computer's memory. It's no longer there. So when we reference it here, when we use number 3 here, it simply can't do anything. So there is a cool way we can fix this. Basically, the manner we can do this is to, inside of the function, call the return keyword. Return does two things. First of all, it stops the function completely. Nothing that comes any line after this line, this will never happen. As you can see, it also Studio also tells me, string statement spans multiple lines, use indentations to silence. It simply will never reach this code. So return basically just stops the function. It does not continue. But we can place one thing after return, and that one thing will be returned outside of the function. So basically, if we do num3, then the num3 will go outside of the function. So when the function stops running, num3 will still exist. So basically, because the function just returns does no longer exist, but this num3 exists in its place, this thing basically gets the value of num3. But we're currently not saving it anywhere. So for example, if we want to save it, we can make a new variable called num3 again, outside of the function. And now this num3, it will get returned, so the function no longer exists in there. And you will get num3 here, basically the same as if you just wrote 2 plus 3 here in this case. So num3 is defined outside of the function again. And as you can see, if we run it again, we get 2 5s instead of 5 and nil. So now no longer is this one undefined. This one now also is defined, also is 5. It is identical to this one. Okay, so as a summary of scope and returning, things that are defined inside of functions and such do not exist outside of the functions, and then we can use the return to return it to a higher scope, so-called scope, where we can use them again, and for example save them in the variable. The higher scope is basically where the function is called instead of inside of the function. And yeah, that's about all we wanted to discuss in this video. Okay, and hello again. Last time we looked at first at printing variables and such, and arithmetic, and after that we looked at functions. Now I forgot to give you a function example, a task you can do, so I'll do that real quick right now. You should write a function that multiplies two numbers that are passed in as parameters, call it, and print it outside of the function. So the task here would be make a function called multiply that takes two parameters and returns the multiplication, then prints the result. It doesn't really matter which numbers you take because it'll have the same. It'll do basically the same things, no matter what the numbers are. The result will obviously be a different number, but the principle, what's happening inside your computer, is the same.